Welcome to another episode of Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Well, folks, the month of December is here, which means it is another year of Codo Cinema Christmas Month. So, throughout the month of December, I'm going to talk about different Christmas movies, whether it's the Christmas movie genre as a whole, or of course a mix of different movie genres with Christmas as one of the genres. And with the month of December here, I thought I would kick off Codo Cinema Christmas Month with Walt Disney's The Santa Claus 2. Now, of course, yes, The Santa Claus 2 is the sequel to the 1994 film The Santa Claus, starring Tim Allen, and it is the second installment in the Santa Claus franchise. And The Santa Claus 2 came out in 2002, directed by Michael Lembeck in his directorial debut. All the principal actors from the first film, including Tim Allen as Santa Claus, including Eric Lloyd, Judge Reinhold, Wendy Crewson, and David Krumholtz, reprising their roles. And of course, we got new cast members, including Elizabeth Mitchell, Spencer Brenslin, and Lillian Mummy. Now, as I mentioned, Michael Lembeck is the director of The Santa Claus 2. Plus, the screenplay was written by Don Reimer, Cinco Paul, Kevin Dario. Pretty sure those two names are familiar because those two names, Cinco Paul and Ken Dario, will later go on to write movies for Universal Studios and Illumination Pictures. And of course, other writers including Ed Decter and John J. Strauss. And it was produced by Robert Newmeyer, Brian Riley, and Jeffrey Silver. Cinematography was done by Adam Greenberg, and it was edited by David Finfer, with George S. Clinton providing the music. And it was distributed by Buena Vista Pictures Distribution with Walt Disney Pictures, Outlaw Productions, and Boxing Cat Films. Now, the film had a release date of October 23rd, 2022 in Los Angeles, but it wasn't released until November 1st of 2002 in the United States as a whole. And the film had a budget of $65 million and it grossed $172.9 million. Now, of course, upon the film's release, the film received mixed reviews from critics, but it still did well at the box office. And of course, with the success of that sequel, there was another sequel titled The Santa Claus 3: The Escape Clause, which was released in 2006. Now, I will go into a little bit of the production of this movie plus the breakdown. I just want to say, if any of you are new to Codo Cinema, welcome to Codo Cinema, the podcast show where I talk about movies. If you are listening to this on YouTube, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button for more content. And if you are listening to this on Spotify and Podbean, don't forget to hit the follow button as well. So there you have it, folks. Now, going back to the production of this movie. Now, the idea of the sequel was brought up in July of 2000 when Disney announced that they were going to move forward with a sequel to The Santa Claus, with the initial draft written by Don Reimer, where the North Pole is operating at maximum efficiency until Santa is confronted with the challenge of balancing work and personal life. Michael Lembeck became attached to direct in November of that year. In April of 2001, Cinco Paul and Ken Dario were brought on by Disney to pen another draft of the sequel. Now, the film was shot in Vancouver, British Columbia, and at Mammoth Studios in Burnaby, British Columbia. And, of course, for the teaser trailer, it was released with 102 Dalmatians and The Emperor's New Groove in late 2000. Originally referred to it as The Santa Claus 2: The Escape Clause, scheduled for release on November 21st of 2001. However, the subtitle was dropped and it was saved for the third Santa Claus movie, which came out in 2006. That's interesting. The Santa Claus 2 was originally going to be titled The Santa Claus 2: The Escape Clause. I wonder what the title for that third film was going to be like. I mean, who knows? I mean, The Escape Clause, sounds like an interesting title right there. Even though, yeah, that subtitle was saved for the third film. So, anyway, we move forward. Now, as I mentioned, George S. Clinton is the one involved with the music. Plus, there's also a soundtrack. Of course, you can't have a movie without a soundtrack, especially around the holidays, right? So you got songs now. Now you got songs like Jingle Bells, Run Rudolph Run, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Plus, you also got a couple of other songs too, like Everybody Loves Christmas, Santa Claus Lane, Santa's Got a Brand New Bag, Blue Holiday, just to name a few. I mean, yeah. Now, of course, as I mentioned, the reception for this movie, I mean, the reception was mixed. I mean, the reviews were not bad, but of course, the reviews were not up to par for what the original movie had. So, if you guys remember the first Santa Claus movie, to which I also reviewed that movie last year. Now, the first movie was a family film, but it had a much more mature theme going on. So, there was definitely some adult jokes. I mean, I guess some of it was hidden aside from that one phone number that Scott Calvin mentioned in the movie. But but that first movie, yeah, it was family friendly, but it did had a mature side. It did had a mature side to it. You know, it was more of a father and son movie around Christmas time, right? This one, on the other hand, while part of the movie does deal with a father and son conflict, there are other subplots going on. Like you have a subplot that has Santa finding a wife before Christmas. Otherwise, he won't become Santa Claus. And then you got another plot. Then you got another subplot where you have this toy Santa filling in for the real Santa Claus at the North Pole while he's away taking care of Charlie. Right? I mean, that's about three subplots for this movie, and I'm pretty sure there might be a couple other subplots, but who's counting anyway? I mean, who's counting the subplots anyway? Like, I can only count three at this point. That seems to be a lot of subplots, and of course, the film is more family friendly than the first movie, so to say. So I can understand why this movie received mixed reviews. In fact, obviously, yeah, plot overly complicated and unrealistic. Although I wouldn't say it was unrealistic. I mean, to be quite honest, I didn't find it unrealistic. I mean, I thought it was fine. But yes, I do have to agree. The plot was overly complicated because you have like three different subplots going on in this movie. Although at the same time, a lot of people enjoyed the festive tone and focus on family themes, which is, I'll be honest, that's pretty good. I mean, family is a big thing. Also, on top of that, you also have like the Santa toy, which some people thought, to which let's be honest, the toy Santa takes over the North Pole like he's a dictator, if so to say. I mean, to those who have seen the movie, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? He literally takes over the North Pole with a bunch of toy soldiers, right? And then, of course, shifting characters. Like some viewers felt that characters changed between scenes or lacked depth, diminishing their investment in the story. Like, yeah, those were some of the mixed reviews, but to be quite honest, though, in my opinion, I thought the movie is fine. Now, I will agree there were definitely a lot of subplots going on, and it shifted to more family friendly compared to the first movie, right? There are some movie sequels where they actually, change the direction to attract a younger audience, right? And I'm pretty sure that's what this movie did. Other examples includes Gremlins 2, Ghostbusters 2, just to name a couple, where they shifted the focus from what they had in the first movie to make it more kid friend to make it more family friendly in the sequel, right? And of course, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles also did that after their first film came out in 1990. And I guess you could say the last two Batman movies from the 90s that were both directed by Joel Schumacher, so to say. So anyway, with that being said, how about we break down this movie, shall we? So anyway, to kick off Codo Cinema Christmas Month, this is my breakdown on the Santa Claus 2. So basically, it has been 8 years since Scott Calvin assumed the role of Santa Claus. And of course, Tim Allen plays the role of Santa Claus. And of course, while that's going on, Santa Claus is basically, he's basically, having a good time at the North Pole, helping out with the elves, making sure everything's going okay. And then of course there was a this movie starts off with a lockdown. Like there's this airplane that flies over the North Pole. I guess they're just flying around, but of course they're picking up a signal from the North Pole, and the North Pole goes on lockdown, right? I mean, I don't know what's up with that, but that's how the movie opens with. That's how the movie opens with. The North Pole going on lockdown until that plane goes away. And it does. So anyway, while Scott's having fun at the North Pole, like Bernard is telling Curtis is a new elf, by the way, who's being played by Spencer Brenslin, and then David Krumholtz returns to play Bernard. So Bernard is trying to tell Curtis that, hey, we gotta tell Santa about this other thing, right? But of course, Santa Claus is basically, or Scott Calvin, I should say. Scott Calvin is having the time of his life at the North Pole. Of course, he helps out with the elves. He also played football with some of the other elves as well. And then on top of that, Bernard and Curtis bring Santa Claus into his office, where one of the other elves brings in like the naughty and nice list, and Scott finds out that his son Charlie is on the naughty list. At first, he thought it was Charlie Sheen, which, to be quite honest, that kind of got me a bit of a chuckle out of that, because I mean, I guess you could say Charlie Sheen is a whole can of worms, so to say. and Scott was like, Charlie Sheen? I thought he was good. But no, that was not the case. It was Charlie, his son, his actual son, Charlie, right? So anyway, while that's going on, Bernard and Curtis are trying to tell Santa Claus, trying to tell Scott about, hey, there's another thing about this whole Santa Claus role. You gotta get married, right? So, so Scott was told that there's an additional clause, the Mrs. Claus, and this was mentioned by Bernard and Curtis, to which they're both basically the keeper of the handbook of Christmas. And in order to avoid breaking the clause and losing his role as Santa forever, Scott is under pressure to get married before the next Christmas Eve. And Scott is informed concurrently by Abby the elf that his teenage son Charlie has been placed on the naughty list because, and actually I forgot, and I'm actually mentioning the reasoning right now. Charlie damaged his school in an attempt to attract attention. So yeah, that's the reason why Charlie's on the naughty list, because he's basically vandalizing the school with spray paint. And of course, to make amends with Charlie and find a wife, Scott needs to go back to his house. He mentions this when the Council of Legendary Figures, which includes the Sandman, Mother Nature, Father Time, Cupid, the Easter Bunny, and the Tooth Fairy. Now, of course, Mother Nature is being played by Aisha Taylor. Father Time is being played by Peter Boyle. The Easter Bunny is being played by Jay Thomas. Cupid is being played by Kevin Pollak. The Tooth Fairy is being played by Art LaFleur, and Sandman is being played by Michael Dorn. They're basically, the council of legendary figures, right? Of course, there's also a moment where the Tooth Fairy tries to vote on changing his name to either Roy or Captain Flossman or the Mullinator. Unfortunately, the council didn't vote on that. Unfortunately, I mean, they kind of like they didn't vote. No vote for the Tooth Fairy change. No vote for the name for changing the name of the Tooth Fairy, so to say. Yeah, that was another moment in that film that was a funny moment. So anyway, to Bernard's dismay, Curtis assists Scott in building a life-size, unstrung Santa clone to make up for Santa's protracted absence. To ensure that the other elves will not question the double's artificial appearance, Bernard grudgingly complies with Santa's request and explains that Santa had a makeover. Yeah, sure, Santa did have a makeover, right? It's still Santa Claus, but he's basically a toy, right? I mean, heck, even Buzz Lightyear made a point to Woody in Toy Story 2 that Woody is a toy. But I do like the moment between the real Santa and the toy Santa, where they're trying to interact with each other for a couple minutes. Like it's funny because he's trying to make sure that the toy Santa, communicates, right? I mean, hey, the toy Santa didn't look that bad, huh? At least later down the road, it'll get bad. But unfortunately, it'll get bad down the road. For at least for the toy Santa, though. So anyway, the approaching expiration of his contract causes Scott to go through a desantification process that gradually transforms him back into Scott Calvin. The magic he can use to aid him is limited. So anyway, before Santa or Scott left for going back home, he's given a watch that has like like it's like a limited supply of Christmas magic, right? He has that, but if he wastes all of it, he won't be able to get back to the North Pole. But of course, he rides with Comet, the reindeer. To which, funny enough, the Comet, the reindeer in this movie, he's speaking gibberish, right? He goes like blah 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 blah. Oh man, I guess you could say they were trying to aim more for the kids in this movie, right? Of course, Scott Calvin goes back home. So anyway, Scott comes home to find his ex-wife Laura, her husband Neil, and of course Charlie and their daughter Lucy, to which Lucy is 6 years old, and of course, Laura is being played by Wendy Crewson, and Neil Miller is being played by Judge Reinhold. Lucy Miller is being played by Lillian Mummy. And then Charlie, where's his name? Charlie's being played by Eric Lloyd. So that's that. So those are the actors playing the characters in this movie. Now, of course, when Charlie vandalizes the lockers, he and Charlie got in trouble with school principal Carol Newman, who is being played by Elizabeth Mitchell. So apparently, when Scott Calvin meets the principal for the first time, like let's just say the principal, well, she's not Ebenezer Scrooge, but she did have a bit of an Ebenezer Scrooge esque character, so to say, not in a grumpy way, but more like in a firm, authoritarian way, so to say, because many of the students, for example, one student is scared of Principal Newman because obviously the students are causing trouble. And of course, at one point, the principal tells the student, "What do you see?" The student was like, "It's dark," and the principal was like, "It's your future. If you keep screwing up like this, so you better get to class." Something like that. But anyway, Scott and the rest of the family talk to the principal. Like the principal tries to, talk to Charlie of like, hey, what's going on? I mean, what's bothering you? Apparently, we find out in the end. This is basically, Charlie, holding on keeping this whole secret of, this whole Santa secret, right? That his dad is Santa Claus, right? But of course, Scott Calvin, he goes on this little rant where he bangs his head on the desk. He is like, "Oh man, hey, you know what? It's Christmas. You know what? It's Christmas, right? I mean, Charlie, you know what you did is wrong. Okay, you better keep. Can you keep my promise? You promise never to do that type of stuff. To do that type of stuff again." Which is basically referring to do that type of stuff again, which is basically him referring to not spray paint or vandalize the school, right? At one point, Charlie says yes, but the principal doesn't buy it. But of course, Scott throws an insult at the principal. He's like, "Here, why don't you here's some cash. Why don't you go buy yourself a Christmas wreath?" Almost similar to how John Candy told that one school principal and Uncle Buck to go downtown and have a rat to gnaw that thing off her face, right? It's basically that's basically after he threw the quarter at her, right? In the Uncle Buck movie, right? To which John Candy played Uncle Buck. So anyway, back in the North Pole, the toy Santa, who is being played by Tim Allen, by the way, he takes the rules too seriously. He takes the rules too seriously and starts to believe that everyone is bad because they make little mistakes, right? Consequently, and at one point, like the elves, at one point, Curtis and Bernard are trying to tell the toy Santa, hey, listen, why don't you go outside and play football with the elves or drink some hot cocoa that the young that Abby made, right? And the toy Santa loves hot cocoa, by the way. And even at one point, the toy Santa plays football, and and which is a very funny moment, by the way, because none of the elves can stop the toy Santa. Oh man! But also down the no, but also down the road, to Scott and the rest of the family brought home McDonald's for dinner, which I'm pretty sure that was an advertisement thing for the movie. Maybe. I don't know. Just go with it. Of course, he's trying to tell everybody that hey, he needs to find a girl. He needs to find a girlfriend to marry. He needs to, find a woman. He needs to find, a Mrs. Claus, right? Like at one point he tries to do it, but like he goes out on a date, right? He goes out on a date with one woman, but it doesn't go well. So he goes back to the room one night to talk to Charlie, right? About how he was about how Charlie met a girl too, right? But of course, I'm pretty sure there's also happened at the middle of the night too. Like Charlie snuck out of the room and vandalized the school lockers again, right? And of course, I do like this moment where while the toy Santa was playing football, like we get this scene of the toy Santa playing football. It cuts back to Charlie running away from school security and being stopped by Principal Newman, right? And then Scott Calvin comes again. However, this time he's basically slimmed down, right? Even Principal Newman was worried about Scott, thought Scott was sick, but of course Scott was like, "Well, not until I got this phone call." So anyway, on the vandalized locker, it's basically Charlie spray painted the principal, and it's like I'm pretty sure the quote is basically trim a tree, go to jail, sort of thing. And Scott Calvin with a different attitude, by the way, he was like, Charlie, you promise you're not gonna do that again. And Scott was gonna like ground Charlie for 2 months. And Charlie's like, wait a minute, I thought you were on my side. But the principal was like, how about this? How about school suspension? That's what the principal told Charlie. But of course, Scott came up with a compromise of, think of doing community service, right? Like cleaning up the spray paint. And Principal Newman actually, and the principal was like, yeah, actually, you know what? That's not a bad idea. Let's do that. So Scott and the principal did a community service for all for the students who were vandalizing the school, right? And and of course down the road, Scott and Carol. Carol's the name of the principal, by the way. They both develop feelings for each other. And of course, they actually go on a date, by the way. So at one point, he rides with her in a horse drawn sleigh to the faculty Christmas party, where she admits that she once believed in Santa before her parents made her stop after she got into arguments with kids who told her that Santa was not real. And of course, at the school, the party itself, let's just say it wasn't going well. So Scott Calvin gives everyone their childhood dream presents, and of course injects some Christmas magic into the otherwise dreary celebration. Yeah, come to think of it, the celebration at the school was very dreary. Like, yeah, come to think of it, the celebration at the school was very dreary. Nobody was like interested at all. But thankfully, Scott Calvin, with Christmas spirit, brings out childhood gifts to everyone at the school. Actually, that's pretty awesome. And actually, that's pretty awesome. And it basically, lifted the school spirit, so to say, right? So, anyway, Carol is won over by his special presentation, and he uses his remaining magic to kiss her beneath the mistletoe. On top of that, he gives her a baby doll. I believe it's a baby doll Christmas present, right? It was a actual toy baby doll, and it was a cute. It was a really cute moment right there. And Carol realizes that, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. Carol really liked it. She really did. And she basically, Carol is won over by the gift and the presentation as well. So anyway, throughout the night, basically Scott and Carol, were basically having the time of their lives. But of course, we get to this, those typical reveal moments that hey, Scott Calvin is actually Santa Claus. But unfortunately, Carol dismisses Scott after he tries to explain that he is Santa because she thinks he is making fun of her early years, which is not really the case. Like he's trying to explain. By the way, where was that snow globe that Scott had? Oh wait, that's right, Charlie had it. I mean, why couldn't he bring out that snow globe, right? That snow globe that Bernard gave to Charlie, and then why didn't he get it from Charlie, right? Why couldn't he just show her? Why couldn't he just show her that of the North Pole, right? Revealing that hey, Scott Calvin is Santa Claus. But of course, Charlie later expresses his displeasure at Scott dating his principal, and he reveals that it's difficult for him because Scott is never present like other fathers, and that he feels pressure to keep his father's identity uh, as Santa Claus a secret. So yeah, right there, Charlie tells his dad that hey, listen, like look, some of my friends, some of my buddies have dads who are basically plumbers, pilots, firefighters, and whatever fields that they are in. But of course, he said like I can't reveal your job because yours is basically a secret, right? He didn't want to like hold on to that burden for so long, right? Which explains why his behavior at school was not good, right? And why he ended up in the principal's office many times. And you know what? That's a very good reason. But at the same time, it did come out pretty quick. But I'll admit, it's basically, Charlie revealing to Scott yeah, yeah, hey, I don't want to keep this burden for so long. I don't want to keep this secret, okay? I mean, that's the reason why he didn't want to share to the principal what's going on. But anyway, the next day, after Lucy persuades Charlie not to be angry with him. Charlie tells the principal that Scott is Santa by displaying the magical snow globe he was given during Scott's first metamorphosis. So anyway, back in the North Pole, Santa Claus has become nothing. The toy Santa Claus has become nothing more than a dictator, so to say, and he tells everyone at the North Pole that, hey, we're not going to give these kids presents. We're going to give them a lump of coal. And all the elves were like, what? But of course, the toy Santa hates to toot his own horn. He sends out an army of toy soldiers to which he makes by using that machine. Like he made one toy soldier and he basically duplicates that toy soldier, turns them big, and makes an army out of it, right? Basically, a bunch of toy soldiers coming out. And then Bernard tells everyone at the North Pole, don't listen to him. He's a phony. He's got a rubber face and a plastic tushy. Don't listen to them. And the toy Santa, for a funny moment, he actually puts his hands down behind his butt because Bernard says plastic tushy, right? and and the toy Santa was like, "Thank you for those kind words, Bernard. Now have a Merry Christmas." And he sends a bunch of coal down the ramp, right? And at the North Pole, all the elves are depressed because they're basically, you know, they're playing around with the coal, right? Because they're basically because the toy Santa is sending coal for the children, right? And a nice little detail too is that the entire floor was basically full of coal dust, right? And on their faces too, right? There's also a funny moment where the toy Santa sees one of the elves and he's like, "Oh, come on, put a smile on your face, huh? Hey, I know what. I know what can cheer. Hey, I know what can cheer you up. Knock knock." The elf was like, "Who's there?" Toy Santa was like, "Aren't you?" The elf was like, "Aren't you what?" And Toy Santa was like, "Aren't you supposed to get back to work?" I don't know why, but that part was pretty funny. But anyway, in order to inform Scott of Toy Santa's scheme, Curtis flies in. But however, Scott, he is exhausted that his magic is gone. And then, of course, the jetpack is basically burnt up on re-entry. And then, of course, Comets is there. I completely forgot that Comet is in this movie, but unfortunately, Comets let himself go because apparently he was eating a lot of candy, and Scott was like, "Comet, What are you doing? You're not supposed to eat you're not supposed to eat sugar. Sugar is bad for you. And Khan was like, ah, bah, 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 bah. And Scott was like, what? Who did this? Bah, 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 bah. A squirrel? Like, Comet comes up with an excuse that the squirrels did it, but unfortunately Santa's not buying it. He's like, well, get this, you gotta fly us back to the North Pole. Comet's like, ba ba ba, and Scott was like, yeah, tonight. He attempts to get Comet off the ground, but unfortunately that fails, and Comet ends up farting. Oh, but of course, another idea pops in of Scott saying, what am I supposed to do? Grow wings? Hey, you got the tooth fairy, huh? So anyway, Scott and Curtis try to, trying to get the tooth fairy's attention by Curtis trying to remove Scott's tooth from his mouth a couple times. One of them was the door trick, and then the other one was a toaster trick, but to no avail. Until Lucy lost a tooth, and Lucy was like, "Hey, can I put it under my pillow?" And Scott was like, "Yes." So then the Tooth Fairy shows up, but unfortunately, but of course, Scott grabs the Tooth Fairy by his wings, and the Tooth Fairy at one point doesn't buy it that Scott Calvin is Santa Claus, but unfortunately, he figures it out by telling him, hey, remember I was at the council meeting telling you about all the names like Roy, Blackman, Captain Flossman, or should I say the Molinator. And of course, he sees Curtis the elf, and Tooth Fairy is like, Santa, the Molinator at your service. So, anyways, the Tooth Fairy flies both Scott and Curtis through, I want to say, a unrendered blue screen, green screen, and Curtis gets knocked out by all the objects on the street, by the way, up until they got to the North Pole. And of course, both Scott and Curtis try to, um, trying to, save the elves, but unfortunately, the toy Santa stops them and restrains them. So then, toy Santa and the soldiers leave to go on the sleigh to, deliver coal for, the naughty kids, so to say. But Charlie and Carol release them by calling upon the Tooth Fairy to transport them to the North Pole, because apparently Charlie lost a tooth, by the way. So anyway, Scott, Charlie, the principal, and all the other elves are trying to stop the toy Santa, but toy Santa already took off with the sleigh. So anyway, Bernard calls another reindeer named Chet, and let's just say Chet crashes a lot, right? And of course, his flying time is about a minute and a half. So anyway, Scott rides on Chet to pursue the toy Santa, who are basically, flying up into the sky to stop the toy Santa, while Bernard, the elves, Carol, and Charlie are out front fighting with the toy soldiers, right? And it's a fun fight, let's be honest. Like, some of the toy soldiers are basically like, they have no fighting chance. Like, the toy soldiers get ripped apart. Like, one toy soldier gets silly stringed to the face. Another one gets his parts torn apart by a bunch of drills. And then you got these snowmobiles, tripping over the toy soldiers, right? And then on top of that, Scott and the toy Santa are basically in pursuit. Like, Scott is trying to distract the toy Santa by turning the reindeers around. And if you pay attention, I think there were 7 reindeer, right? There were like 7 of them. Oh, that there were seven. There were 7 of them, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I mean, who's counting, right? So then, there are definitely some funny moments from Toy Santa. Like he's saying, "Look out! You're scaring me!" Man, he's an action hero. And then, of course, we get a Toy Story reference. You are a sad, strange little man. When I heard the Toy Santa said that line, I laughed. I mean, come on. Tim Allen said that line to Woody in the first Toy Story movie. You are a sad, strange little man. I mean, come on, man. It's Tim Allen. I know he did Home Improvement. I wonder if there was a Home Improvement reference to that. Although, I guess you could say, Scott telling the toy Santa, Honey, I'm home. I mean, I guess that could be a quote from Home Improvement. I mean, I don't know. But Anyway, Scott. Basically, Scott and the toy Santa are fighting over with the reindeer, but unfortunately, they lost the straps and the reins. They lost the reins that controlled the reindeer, right? And of course, the town broke the fall of the sleigh, and the toy Santa basically crashes in front of the stairs. So anyway, all the elves put the toy Santa back in this machine where it reduces him down to a small toy Santa, right? And of course, Scott and Carol are married in a ceremony, but also before that, Carol was like, "Wait, what?" And Scott explains that he can't be Santa Claus without a Mrs. Claus, right? But thankfully, it turned out pretty well, and Carol was basically all emotional and excited about it. So, Scott and Carol are married in a ceremony. Scott turns back into Santa, and Carol turns into Mrs. Claus. The toy Santa is vanquished and reduced to 6 inches, to which there is a end credit scene where the toy Santa is dancing with a bunch of other toy Santas, while Carol is basically having the time of her life. So, so yeah. Anyway, and Christmas continues as usual. Meanwhile, at the end of the movie, Lucy is informed that Scott is Santa Claus by Scott and Charlie, who also pledged to keep his secret. And on top of that, let's be honest. Let's be honest. Lucy kind of figured that out already, that Scott is Santa Claus from the get go, so to say. But it's a pretty cute moment. It's kind of cute, like you realize that, hey, a family member is Santa Claus, right? So then Santa leaves for the night, takes Comet with him, and of course Chet is basically the lead reindeer for at that moment, right? And Santa calls out for Chet to, because Chet is flying down. He should be flying straight, right? And that's how the movie ends, by the way. So there you have it, folks. That is my breakdown on the Santa Claus 2. Now, before I close out the episode, I thought I'd give him my thoughts, and then we will do a little bit of trivia as well. Now, overall thoughts, I enjoyed the movie. I thought the movie is fun. It's not as good as the original Santa Claus movie from 1994, but the sequel is still good. I will say it was just basically the difference, it's just basically the subplots and basically the fact that it's trying to aim more for a much more family friendly field compared to what the first one did. I mean, I guess that's probably the reason. In my opinion, that's probably the reason why the sequel didn't didn't do well, but it was still good enough for basically for a fun Christmas movie. I mean, it's a lot of fun. You can definitely pinpoint some of the flaws throughout the movie, and I'll be honest, some of the visuals in this movie are, let's just say, they didn't really age great. Like the flying scene with Tooth Fairy, Scott, and Curtis, that didn't really age well for the visuals. And then I guess you can say the scene where Chet is basically charging at Scott towards the end of the movie. Like the visual effects on that, let's just say the running scene for that didn't really age that great. I mean, just to name a couple. For the visuals for the rest of the movie are okay, so to say. But other than that, if I were gonna rate this movie, I would say I would give it a 7 out of 10. It's not a perfect, it's not a great sequel by any means. Sure, it may sound a little higher than I expected, but it's still a fun sequel to watch. I enjoy the sequel. It's just like there's definitely some flaws in that movie, from like some of the visuals, the subplots, and of course the shift to family friendly from what the first film had, so to say. But anyway, just to close out this episode, let's dive into some trivia, folks. So anyway, early in the movie when Curtis is rambling on before telling Santa the bad news, the puppets in the room yell, "Get on with it!" This is a classic gag line used in Monty Python and the Holy Grail when a character goes off on a tangent. And I actually forgot about those puppets. I forgot those puppets were in that movie too. I mean, they appeared in the first movie, but only for a few seconds. But they appeared again in the sequel for only a few seconds. And I find it funny that the puppets were basically telling Curtis to get on with it, right? Just get on with this whole Mrs. Claus thing, right? uh so anyway, also to mention, the line "quit the chit chat" comes directly off a season 1 episode of Tim Allen's Home Improvement, where a man named Chet on the phone babbles too much during the game of Stump the Tool Man. Oh, quit the chit chat. Okay, so there is a Home Improvement line right there. I always thought it was the "Honey, I'm home." Well, I guess not though. So anyway, the toy soldiers, or should I say tin soldiers, their costumes weigh over 40 pounds, and that's because it was made of fiberglass. And according to the actors who wore them, were uncomfortable and hard to move in. I mean, Jiminy Crickets, come to think of it, walking around in the toy soldier outfits. Yeah, that's gonna be tough. That's tough to move. So anyway, also to mention to anybody who has seen the Santa Claus sequels, you do realize that the North Pole is a lot different compared to the first one, right? So apparently, a new North Pole set was constructed for the sequel film. The new set is similar to the one from the original movie, but is brighter and more magical. The new set also fleshed out more of Santa's village, including multiple different buildings and an outdoor square, which was only mentioned briefly in the first film. Also, whether intentional or not, Carol Newman is very similar to Jessica from Santa Claus is Coming to Town in 1970. Like Jessica, she works at a school, is given a doll by Santa, and even shares the same hairstyle and blue eyes. Actually, come to think of it, I never thought of that because in the Santa Claus Coming to Town special, Santa Claus is being introduced to a school teacher who at one point is strict, but will later help with Santa, delivering gifts to the kids, and of course the two bond a relationship. Also, this is David Krumholtz's final appearance to also to note, the last this is the last Santa Claus film to feature David Krumholtz as Bernard. Now, to many people who have seen the Santa Claus, to many people who have kept up with the Santa Claus movies, Bernard is not in the third movie. I don't know the reason behind Bernard not being in the movie for some reason, but I'm not really sure. It could be scheduling issues or something, but who knows? But to be quite honest, yes, Bernard is not in the Santa Claus 3 movie. Now, of course, all the child actors played the elves in the movie, right? And then, of course, the Santa Claus 2 is the first Santa Claus film to be rated G by the Motion Picture Association, unlike the original film was rated PG. So, yes, the remaining Santa Claus movies are rated G because the first movie was rated PG. Because, as I mentioned, the movie had more of a mature tone with some adult jokes, which kind of pushed for that PG rating in the first movie. Also, Molly Shannon, who plays the Christmas obsessed Tracy in this movie, who is basically one of the ladies that Scott went on a date with, um, previously appeared as Betty Lou Who in How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which came out in 2000. Anyway, when Scott captures the Tooth Fairy and tells him he is Santa, the Tooth Fairy doubting that Scott is Santa. When Scott captures the Tooth Fairy and tells him he is Santa, the Tooth Fairy, doubting that Scott is Santa Claus, tells him, "I know Santa. Santa is a friend of mine, and you, sir, are no Santa." This is a parody of Lloyd Benson's famous retort to Dan Quayle during the 1988 U.S. vice presidential debate. Well, there's a debate right there between the Tooth Fairy and Santa Claus, so to say. Oh, man. So, as the toy Santa tries to leave the North Pole, he only has 7 reindeer, due to Comet being indisposed at Neil and Laura's house. Later, his spot is filled by Chet. Yeah, so I was right. So there were 7 reindeer during that pursuit. Also, the note, going back to the Tooth Fairy scene, the Tooth Fairy goes to collect Lucy's tooth. There is a poster of Disney's Kim Possible on her wall because around that time, the Santa Claus 2 came out in 2002. I think around that time, that's when the Kim Possible TV show was premiering, right? And also, the Toy Santa is basically the first. I want to say is the first villain in the franchise, and the only villain not to be redeemed. Yeah, in this movie, like the toy Santa, he doesn't get a redemption. He gets put back into that machine, and he gets reduced to 6 inches tall, and he's basically with all the other toy Santas as well, right? So the toy Santa is still around, but unfortunately, he doesn't get a redemption arc. Also to note, the toy Santa was obviously a funny villain throughout this movie, and yeah, I guess you could say his role as a dictator might have, stretched the bar for some people, but the toy Santa was a fun villain throughout the movie. I mean, it's like Terminator a little bit, but toned down to a G-rated film, right? Because you know how in Terminator Skynet, was basically Skynet has like these androids who are basically their main thing is to do good, but unfortunately they turn against humanity and destroy it, right? This is kind of similar to that, but the only difference is the toy Santa doesn't kill. He decides to, he sees kids doing naughty stuff for the littlest things, right? Of course, the idea of the toy Santa backfires is kind of like the androids from Skynet's backfiring as well, right? But anyway, that is about it for the trivia. So there you have it, folks. So that's it. So anyway, that's it. So anyway, that is it for the trivia. And there you have it, folks. That is my take on the Santa Claus 2. So so anyway, to anyone who is listening, what did you guys think of the Santa Claus 2? Did you like this movie? Did you not like this movie? Did you think this movie was okay? I would love to hear your thoughts. Well, anyway, that will be a wrap for this episode. Thank you all for tuning in to Codo Cinema. I'm your host, Mark Codo, aka Codoman. Remember to watch movies, stay positive, and Codo Cinema Christmas Month has just begun.